it's because this dropped.
Test, test, 1, 2. I should have audio now. Perfect. Okay, so my apologies on that. So anyway, to do another quick little brief introduction, Chris Pies here again. We're tackling the Watkins Glen Cup layout here for the Summer Series 2. Which is the next race that will be happening in a couple weeks. What I had just said was that Watkins Glen is a bit interesting in the sense that it's got one of the longest straightaways that is on the racing calendar of any series. Basically, from turn one all the way to the bus stop is just flat out driving, which gives a tendency to want to run a car with very little downforce to give you an advantage on that straightaway. However, the downside to that, or the potential downside to that, is where you need to be able to control your car in some of these really high-speed corners, like the carousel or the couple of last corners on the track. The rear end of the car can become really unstable if you run too low a downforce. So we can talk about downforce, about kind of an optimal setup for this track. But what I tend to find is when you set your car up, you want to set it up for basically the last two corners, make sure the car's under control and you're driving within a comfort zone. You're not driving completely on edge. And then from there, you can kind of try to take away downforce until it's those two corners start to become a little bit hairy. In my practicing, I started finding maybe a couple clicks off the rear wing was providing an optimal amount of straight line speed with enough grip to take those last two corners. But we'll go into it in a little bit more detail. So does anybody have any questions about Watkins Glen before we start the track walk? All right. Sounds like no. It sounds like someone's got a little bit of an open mic. If you wouldn't mind making sure that your mics are muted, that'd be great. We'll mute him anyway. All right, so here we go. So we're going to get this party started. I don't know what the conditions are specifically for the race in a couple of weeks, but just for those keeping score at home, I was running at a pretty cold track, so 68 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, and it looks like when I started getting in the groove, I was doing 106s, high 106s. So we'll take my fast lap, and we'll use that as a reference. But then we can talk about some other laps and some of the differences in lines with some of the alternative laps that I did. So, as I mentioned before, screaming down the front straight here, we're going to come into turn one. Turn one has some really good visuals that we can use in order to make sure we're hitting the proper brake marks. So you've got 3, 2, and 100 board going into turn one. Almost for every car, I tend to use that first board, that 300 board, as my brake zone. Now, obviously, cars that maybe aren't going as fast, you can maybe go a little deeper, or cars that don't have as good of brakes or have as good brake capability as a GT3 car, like say the 911 Cup, you may have to brake a little sooner than this. But 300 is usually about the area of where you want to start braking. So right here, I go actually pretty much right at the 300 board. I'm starting to get on the brakes. The key thing about turn one, and it's incredibly important to get turn one right, is we need to get off the brakes as soon as we can, roll speed through the corner, and get on the throttle as soon as we can. As I mentioned before, this is leading on to one of the longest straightaways in racing. Every mile an hour that we can carry through the apex of this corner, and the sooner we can start accelerating, we will see a benefit all the way down this really long straightaway. This really long straightaway allows you to set up passes, get by people through drafting, and just overall make moves on competitors, unlike any other area on the track, frankly. So turn one is absolutely critical in order to, one, get a good lap time, and two, make some inroads on your competitors. So coming down here, after the 100 board, I'm starting to turn in. The goal in my eye, and what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get my right side tires kissing the outside of the big curbing. So if you look at the track, we've got a lot of camber here on apex, including the first little section of curbing, and then the curbing kind of jumps up again, and your camber vanishes. So we want to use all of this first tier of curbing with that is basically flat with the track, and we want to try to avoid getting up on the second curbing as much as possible. We can kiss it, but we don't want to put two wheels on it because it will really upset the car, and in some cases causes a spin. So stay off of it. So right here, as you can see, I'm starting to come down, getting right next to the second tier curbing. As you can see, I'm not quite on it. I'm pretty much as close as I want to be. And we want to kind of try to late apex this corner. So you can see here, I mean, if you're getting really granular, you'll see maybe just after or right at the third red candy stripe here. I'm not looking for that point specifically. I'm just kind of feeling it out, but it looks like on average, I tend to hit right around this area. If you apex too early, meaning you turn in too early on this corner, and you apex, say, somewhere right here, the problem you're going to run into is you're going to run out of track on your exit if you try to carry any speed. The result will be that you'll have to stay on not the brakes, but you'll have to delay your throttle input till later if you early apex, which is significantly going to hamper your speed down the straightaway. So focus on a late apex, focus on something around here, the third red, maybe the second yellow on the back end of the curbing as you're coming out, and then get on full throttle as soon as you can in order to take advantage of the straightaway. On exit, we can use all of this curbing on exit curbing. We don't want to go beyond the curbing with our right side tires. That will give you a 1x. And if you go way too far, I think you can pick up a slowdown, but I mean, that is a way out here. If you get in here and you start to get in trouble and you're starting to realize, hey, wait a second, I'm not going to make this corner. I'm going to have some problems. Rather than trying to save the car or trying to be a hero and keep the car on track, just open your hands, take the 1x, keep your momentum, drive out here, get control of your car, and then just bring it back on track. It's not really good to see folks so scared of picking up a 1x on exit that they end up looping the car or lifting off the throttle and unbalancing the car and then having a spin here. So keep that in mind. So without stopping it like I've been doing, we're going to brake at the 300, turn after the 100, late apex, off the brake as soon as we can, get on the throttle, and get a good run out coming out of the corner. Since there's so few corners on this track, if you have any questions on any of them, just, say, hey, can you explain that again? I think in terms of gearing, I'm in third gear through here at apex. Let me just check by going into the cockpit. So fourth, third. So I'm taking third gear through here and then back on throttle. Running up through the gears down the straightaway. These corners here through the S's are pretty easy flat out in a GT3 car. On the first lap, you may just want to be extra cautious in the sense that you're leaving yourself a little bit of headroom in terms of the corners, because the cold tires can maybe get you into a spot where you've run out of track because of cold tires, so the car starts to push out or something. So just keep that in mind. Take an extra, exaggerate your line basically, and treat everything like apexes and proper track out points. So the big one that you really are kind of worried about is the second one coming up the hill that's blind, but we want to just treat it like a normal apex. So apex basically right here where the car is pointed at this tower, and you should be able to make the exit really nicely. Going through the S's, just a general thing to remember, if you're turning the steering wheel, so you have any type of steering angle in the car when you're going through the S's, you're scrubbing speed. So you're adding friction to the front of the car, and the car is not going to be accelerating as fast as it possibly can. So the less you can move your steering wheel through the S's, the less drag you have in the car and the faster you're going to ultimately go. So if you're putting in crazy inputs in here because you're just not really paying attention or your brain's turning off to the S's, you're going to end up scrubbing more speed than somebody that's really focusing on keeping their hands as quiet as possible through there. So every little bit counts. It could result in a mile-an-hour difference at the end of the straightaway, which is not insignificant. So keep that in mind. Coming up to the bus stop, this is a really good passing opportunity. Things we need to be aware of. Let's talk about the optimal line in general. I'm looking at the 400 board here on the left side of the track where I'm usually have the car. And then the goal for the bus stop and what I'm thinking of is my first apex is going to be basically the Armco here on the right. So I'm going to jump over this curb really aggressively. And you have to, because if you don't jump over it aggressively, you end up in a really bad situation where the car really is unstable. So you either want to jump over the curb really aggressively, or you want to try to basically miss the curb. One or the other. Don't go halfway between the two. And I'll show you what I mean. So as you turn in here, you brake at 400, turn in around the 200 board, and then my apex point, what I'm looking for is I'm basically looking at this grass right here is what I want to drive the car over. So I brake, turn in. After I turn in, I'm off the brake to stabilize the car. I don't want to be on the brakes when I hit this curb because the car is going to get unsettled. I want it to be a relatively flat platform. Hit the curb right here. Notice I don't have any pedal input whatsoever because the car is going to do a little jump. And then when it lands on the back side, I can hit the brake again once all four wheels are on the tire to do the transition to the left. And it's just a little soft brake just to scrub a little bit more speed, get the nose set to take a better left-hander. Take all the curb on the left, keep it nice and tight, hit the next curb, the third apex on the left, open my hands and drive out, use all the curb on the right. So we're hitting every single apex through the bus stop and trying to keep our momentum as high as possible. So as I can see again, off all pedals, land, little touch of the brakes, apex 2, apex 3, and apex 4. I am getting on full throttle through the bus stop after apex 2. So at this point right here, I'm basically transitioning to full throttle, as you can see. And at this point in the bus stop, I am 100% full throttle all the way through exit. There's a lot of lines through here. I've seen some people just completely send it in here like real much faster than I go through here on the entry. So they're actually like accelerating coming through here or less brake, or I don't know how they do it, frankly, but you can do that. But realize that if you do that, you're going to have to at some point slow the car down to get through the second half of the bus stop. So whether you're fast in the first part or you're fast in the second part, it kind of all tends to even out. I personally like to be a little bit slower and under control in the entry so I can get on throttle sooner and carry speed coming out. But your mileage may vary. Try different lines, what sees fit. But anyway, what I was saying with the entry point, and you either are aggressive and you're jumping the entire curb, or you're trying to avoid missing the curb. If you have two wheels like over here on the left side, left of where I'm at, and you're kind of in the middle no man's land between those two lines, the car really gets upset. And a lot of, I've found myself, the right side of the car bounces, the left side of the car is in impact with the wheel, or the tires are touching the tarmac. And basically when the car lands, it does a weird little bump and results in some spins. So either attack it and get as close to the wall as possible, or miss the curb entirely, depending on what your comfort zone is. Any questions through the bus stop?
What gear are you in through here?
I should be in fourth gear, but let me check. Maybe fifth? Yeah, I'm in fourth gear. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next fun corner, which is the carousel. So let's say we come all the way through the bus stop. We're on full throttle. We go through over the last apex curbing. What do we do here through the very, very long right-hander? I like to coast through the beginning or the entry point of the carousel. Remember, one of the things that we need to do, because these races are on the longer side, is we do need to conserve our tires, or we need to be cognizant of it. We don't need to actively conserve, but we don't want to just be like completely burning up tires the entire way through, because we'll have no tires for the end of the race. So one way to be easy on your tires is to not put all the weight of the car on one corner of the car during high load, lengthy turns like carousels as such. So one way you could drive this corner is you could just send it in, get on the brakes, and basically trail brake all the way around the corner. But if you do that, all the stress and all the weight of the car is going to sit on that front outside wheel. And over time, lap after lap, if you keep driving it like that, you're going to start getting less and less grip out of that front left tire. It's going to be overheating, and as a result, you're going to have less grip, and then you're going to be leaning on the brakes even more, which means you lean on the tire even more, which means you keep wearing it even more, and it just starts to cascade into this uncontrollable amount of tire wear that the more you lean on it, the less grip it gives you, which means the more you lean on it. So you end up burning that tire almost exponentially over all the rest of the tires. To conserve tires, what you want to do is you want to kind of try to keep the platform of the car as balanced as possible, so you're not leaning all your weight on one specific corner of the car. You're kind of using all four corners to help you turn. So in the first laps that you do that, you may not have as much grip or cornering speed as that guy that is trail braking and putting all the weight on that front left tire. But over the course of a lengthy race, if he's doing it every single time he comes through here and you're taking control of the car, you're going to end up having more tire at the end, so you'll end up over time going through the corner faster later on in the race, if that makes sense. So what I like to do is when I come through here, I get off the brake and I just kind of coast. I'm just coasting in here. So as I have steering in the car, as we talked before, steering angle causes your front tires to create friction. That friction in turn creates drag, which acts as a way of braking the car. So by just getting off the pedals altogether with the steering angle to go through here, I am slowing the car down with that steering angle, and that is causing the front end of the car in general, to kind of start tucking into the corner. So still coasting, still coasting, still coasting. What I'm looking for is this flag stand right here. I want to apex this corner basically in somewhere around the flag stand. You can go later, you can go a little bit earlier, but the flag stand is my goal, to basically get this car to start tucking in to when I get on the throttle, my apex point is going to be somewhere around this flag stand. So you can see here, I've already started picking up the throttle because I know I was tucking in. That was my apex point. Now, granted, I didn't get all the way to the curb, but it's not that big a deal in the carousel. But I'm full throttle at this point, and I am starting to open my hands. On the exit of the carousel, since we're not going down to the boot, the turn kind of just keeps going. And the nice thing about the cup course is that we've got this extra runoff that, true to life, is part of the racing surface at the end of the day. So we can use it if we want to. There's not really an advantage to taking it all the way out to the wall, frankly, except trying to minimize your tire wear by kind of opening your hands as the car's speeding up. If you keep your hands tucked in, you're adding scrub to and friction to the front tires, and you can cause the tires to wear as a result. So basically, drive where the car is going to tell you it wants to go. Don't try to fight anything, but you have all this run out that you can use to basically keep the car platform nice and stable without trying to force it in. If you take a later apex through the carousel, so after the flag stand, you're going to end up tracking out somewhere over here on the curbing. That's fine. In fact, that's probably more of an ideal line time and time again. But if you apex somewhere at the flag stand or a little before, you're going to find the car trying to go out here into the runoff area. That's okay too. Just nice and easy. Understand that when you kind of transition from track to runoff, there is a bit of a bump. So what I like to do is I like to try to focus between the grass and this curbing. Is a really good visual in terms of if I'm going to go into the runoff, I can just drive right through there. But there is a bump right here. As you can see, the car has jumped. And so just make sure your hands are pretty straight when you hit that bump. And then when you come back over, there'll be another bump when you come back over, but it's even less significant as going on to the runoff. The other thing I'll say about the runoff is just look at the track in general. Notice how the track is relatively flat. Notice how the runoff is cambered to the left pretty significantly. What we want to avoid is basically early apexing through the carousel or getting into a situation where we have a lot of steering angle and we have to use the runoff. So if we're fighting the car to get around the final bit of the corner and we're going to be in the runoff area, as soon as we hit this runoff and we hit that bump, any kind of steering angle is going to cause the car's just going to want to understeer and keep understeering. So you may not think it when you go out and practice and do 10 laps or so, but if you go out there and do 40 laps, you'll notice that the front end of the car is starting to get more understeering as the tires wear, and you can easily find yourself really having to fight the car to try to avoid the Armco on the left side. So later apex just makes it easier in general to be able to get the car and keep the car in a good spot. So I only like to use the runoff if I absolutely have to. I don't like to use it on a regular basis. So let's assume we got through there pretty good, and we got a good run coming down this little straightaway coming up to the penultimate corner. If you drive this track a lot and you're using the boot layout, this corner is it's automatic, right? And a lot of times I think in the GT3R, if it's not flat, it's just like a little bit of a lift and then back on the throttle. On the cup layout, that's not the case because we're coming a lot faster into this corner than if we're running the boot. So we actively have to use these brake markers in order to add brake to slow the car down. I like to use the 300 board. It's a really good visual to be able to hit the brakes and get a good turn in and get the car slowed down. Beware of the grass here on the right. It is very easy to move the car too far to the right and get your right side tires in the grass. And if you hit the brakes too hard with your right side tires in the grass, it can unsettle the car. It's not as bad as iRacing grass used to be, but it's not ideal if you get all the way over there. So just be aware that the grass is there and that we don't want to be in it when we're hitting the brakes. So just after the 300 board, the brakes is going to be a pretty good little push of the brakes, maybe to about a 7 pedal, and then trail off the brake as we start to turn in. The goal through this corner is off the brakes as soon as we can, roll the speed through. You'll see there's a lot of camber in this corner. It's much faster than you think it is. I should be in 4th gear, I want to say, maybe even 5th. Let's see here, 5th. So I'm actually in 5th gear all the way through. So you can see the speed that we've got in the car coming through here. The faster you can take this corner, the better. You're going to have more downforce coming over your wings. We want to treat it like a traditional apex corner, so we're going to apex right at the middle point. Get on throttle basically as we're coming to apex, drive through the corner. The worst thing that we can do is like trail brake down to this apex, frankly, and brake too far into the corner. We want to make sure we're adding throttle as we're coming through the apex. What that's doing is doing two things. One, it's pushing the rear of the car down to give stability to the rear. It's also accelerating out of the corner, so we're getting a good run. If we are on the brakes when we're coming down to the apex, what we're doing is we're putting the weight on the nose of the car, and the rear of the car is going to become really light and is going to want to oversteer. This corner this car tends to oversteer already if you don't run enough downforce. So any kind of weight bias that is you're putting on the front of the car through this high-speed corner, it's just going to exasperate the rear end trying to swap on you. So adding throttle is settling that rear of the car, putting that weight on those big fat rear tires, and using the advantage of this car, which is all that weight on the rear of the car, to get that rear end settled so it doesn't want to spin you. Quiet hands all the way through here. If you are very aggressive with your hands and you're moving them a lot, you can unsettle the rear. Again, this corner is super fast. We're going like 120 plus at the apex through here. The last thing we want to do is be adding a lot of steering inputs back and forth and sawing at the wheel. The quieter we can keep our hands, the more stable the platform will be all the way through. On exit, we can use the curbing. I don't like to go too far beyond the curbing. You can and not pick up a 1X. If you go too far, you will pick up a 1X, but I don't like to go too far out because we got to get the car all the way over to the left to set up for the final corner. So driving all the way out here, is just additional distance that we're traveling that we don't necessarily have to, as well as having to move the car all the way left to get it to go right again. So I try to keep it nice and tidy. I try not to go too much further out than this. Final corner is a difficult one. There's not really a really good brake zone. There's no signs, for instance. So what I try to do is I look at this tire wall, and my brake zone is just before the end of the tire wall. It also corresponds with how the car kind of just goes out, tracks out, bring it over to the left, and as soon as I bring it over to the left, I'm on the brakes again. So it's more of a rhythm thing rather than a specific point. But I brake pretty much at the end of the tire wall. Fourth gear, tuck it down, much like the previous corner, lots of camber. It's a little bit slower than the previous corner. It also turns a little bit more than the previous corner. However, the general idea is the same. We want to get down, get on throttle coming out of the corner or before apex to settle the rear of the car, and be very quiet with our hands so we're not upsetting the balance of the car through the corner. This is, like I said, a fourth gear corner. You can take it in third gear, but frankly, if you're going all the way down to third gear and using a lot of third gear, then you probably overslowed the car anyway. Fourth gear always feels like it's too high a gear, but frankly, if you're using it to take advantage of it, that means you're carrying speed through there. Third gear, I just tend to overslow when I do it. So I like fourth gear through here. Use all the curbing, get close to the wall. If you end up in situations where you're finding yourself tapping this wall, it's probably a factor of turning in too early for this corner. So if you turn in too early here, you're going to run out of room on exit, and you're probably going to tap the wall. Try to apex later. Now on this particular lap, I'm a mile off the apex. You need to be closer than I was. For some reason, I just could not get it down there. But understand that I still kept it off the wall because I did a late apex there. And then you're screaming down the front straight, and that's a lap of Watkin's Glen Cup. Short lap, like just over a minute, not a whole lot of turns. A lot of the track is completely wide open throttle. So the turns that we do have, we have to take advantage of them and make the most of them, because if you're good at turning and you're good at cars or tracks that are technical, you're gonna have to find your spots to get advantages over the field, because there's not a lot of turns. All right, any questions before I just kind of go to cockpit and let it run without me interrupting? Let's see if there's anything on. No. Bueller, you guys can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, here, let me run it at full speed. So coming down, we're looking at the 300 board. That's where we're going to brake. Late apex, off the brake, on the throttle, get a good run coming out. Apex, the two corners in the S's like normal corners. Nice and wide, easy hands. Try to stay as quiet as possible coming through there. All the way up to 6th gear. Looking for the 400 board. Brake, get all the way down to the wall. Brake again, apex every single corner in there. Then off all pedals and coast, coast, coast. On throttle when we know we're going to hit that apex. Open your hands as we come through the end of the carousel. Let the car basically let the car do what it wants to do. Brake at the 300 board, off the brakes, down to 5th gear, back on throttle to settle the rear. Brake as soon as we get to the left, down to 4th, back on throttle, drive for the front. I think I did another lap immediately after this, so we can do it again since it's so short. Screen down here, brake at the 300 board, late apex, back on throttle. Apex like normal through here, quiet hands. That's the biggest, probably the biggest advantage you can get on this track is keeping your hands as quiet as possible down through the S's and down the straightaway. Looking for the 400 board, we're gonna brake there, get off the brakes, apex near the wall, apex every single corner as you see, and then off and just coast through here, coast, coast, coast. back on throttle once we get to that flag stand. Opening our hands constantly through there to allow more grip to the car as we accelerate. Look for that 300 aboard. We're going to brake, downshift to fifth, turn in, off the brakes, back on throttle. You can see I'm fighting the car a little bit through there. Much better down to the apex. I went down to third gear, but you see how quick it was. Fourth gear is, frankly, the better lap, or the better gear through there. All right. What I did want to show also is what happens when you run too little downforce on this in this track. I think it was this lap. So I was running. No, it wasn't that one. I was running multiple laps with a lower downforce set, and while I was getting a mile an hour or two down the straight benefit, the car was becoming just absolutely a bear to drive through anything that was high speed and technical. So through this section, it was fantastic. I mean, I'm screaming through. I think I'm like hitting 165 or something crazy. So 160, 161, 162, 163. Okay through here because it's relatively straight. And then right here is where the car starts to really start to fight. So it steps out, you see there. I'm fighting it. It steps out again. That's all because of lack of rear downforce, lack of wing. So if you're finding yourself getting in situations where the car is trying to swap ends on you like that, check your wing, and your setup can really help settle the rear of the car if you're having problems with oversteer coming through there. Anyway, that's Watkin's Glen Cup. Is there any questions whatsoever on that or questions on setup? And I'm happy to share my setup too.
Yeah, I've got a couple of generic questions. I know the elephant in the room on corner one here, if you want to go halfway past the apex of the corner and onto the straightaway before the S's. Okay, so propose there's a car to your left right now, and you two are going in side by side. You're the inside car. You go hang on the white line on the left side. At some point, you've got to let the other car back in, or does that other car have to hit their brakes so they don't take you out trying to get back onto the track?
Oh, so if there's a car out here to the left.
Right.
Yeah.
That will happen. And we like to be nice and let them in. Technically, you don't have to, but you're also inviting, side-by-side damage.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you never have to yield to a car that's off track that's going to be coming back onto track. That's the letter of the law, basically. However, understand that if the car that's on the outside of you that is off track thinks that you're giving them room and they need to come back on track at some point, right? And they just kind of move over and they sideswipe you and you guys end up making contact. While you may be 100% in the right, you still had contact with another car and you may have wrecked as a result. So we're all friends here. I always, even if I'm in a super competitive setting, I never try to pinch someone off the track at the end of the day. I'll always move over, understanding, knowing that they're going to be trying to get back on the track as well. So if this is the case and I'm here at this point, there's a car out here, I will do my best to move over and give them a car's width so they can get back at least on the curbing to go too wide through the S's. Now they may pull out, they may lift off the gas to make sure that they are safe and they were going to tuck in behind you. But that doesn't always happen. And so, drive to fight for another day. Don't drive to basically be bullheaded and say, I have the right of way, you don't get a chance, because at the end of the day, if they do come back on and there's a contact and you guys wreck, you could be in the right, but you're still sitting in pit lane with a broken car. So I'd much rather yield a little bit of room to make sure that it's safe and that we're not going to crash, rather than trying to, I guess, take the high road and say that I'm in the correct and you're in the wrong and be wrecked in pit lane anyway. So, but great question through there. And that also brings up the whole, hey, where can you pass on this track? So the other thing I was going to say about the big thing about passing here, it's very tempting to pass going into turn one right here. Incredibly tempting. You got a good run coming out of the last corner. You're drafting on them, heavy braking area, easy to get on the inside, outbrake your opponent, take away the apex, and continue on your way. The issue with that, though, is that if you do that, you both are going to be slow going through turn one relative to the field. And turn one is the most important turn on the track because it dictates how good a run you get all the way down to the bus stop. So if you are slow, meaning that you took this corner from mid track because you're trying to pass somebody, you're not going to be going, you're not on the optimal line. You're not going to be going as fast as you can through turn one, the most important corner, and you're going to lose time to everybody, including the guy you're trying to pass. Because if they're on the outside and you dove them, or even if you got alongside them and broke alongside of them and you took it in, if they delay their turn in just a little bit to try to over under you and get a good run coming through the corner, they're going to be drafting you all the way down this big long straightaway, and probably you're going to get alongside you going into the bus stop. So yeah, you passed them coming through turn one, but your exit is compromised as a result. They're going to get a run on you all the way down the straightaway, and you lost time to the field throughout there. I would much rather focus on getting behind the car that I'm trying to make the pass on, stay behind them going into turn one, focus on getting a good run coming out of this corner, and then even if we get equal runs coming out, if I'm right on their tail, I've got a draft all the way down the straightaway. I can probably get by them before the bus stop, no problem. So think what this corner is setting up for before you try to pass in it. And sometimes it's just more beneficial to wait and be patient and get it into a better situation where you can pass and make it stick. Because if you pass going into the bus stop, there's less likelihood of a repass coming, because the next straightaway is going to be after the carousel. They'd have to make a good carousel coming through that. So this is the best passing zone, frankly, because you came off that straightaway. It can be a little bit dangerous, especially if you're going too wide and neither party wants to really concede going into the bus stop. 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening is you'll have one car is going to be on the outside and one car is going to be on the inside going into the bus stop, and you're going to be in a braking duel coming in. Unless it's the last lap, going too wide into the entry of the bus stop is just dangerous. It can be done, but it requires exceptional skill from both drivers and good awareness and racing room. So it's not always advised. So if you're the outside car coming into the bus stop, probably best just to give it a little bit of a lift, let the inside car go by, and then follow them through the bus stop and try to get a run coming out of the bus stop on them where you can make a run through the carousel. But too wide is just not advised because so much contact happens and people get wrecked through there. So.
They like to push you into that wall.
Oh, this inside? Well, if there's a car on the outside, yeah. If you're on the inside here, if you're over here, this car on the outside can't push you into the wall. Like that's not allowed. So there's got to be room that's given.
They do it.
Well, it can be done. I mean, yeah, but understand that's not the way it's supposed to happen. So think about how you want to do it. Even if you're the inside car, yeah, if this outside car squeezes you and you don't have any room, that's always a risk as well. So think about, do you really want to go try to take it too wide into this corner? My answer is usually no, unless it's the final lap and I'm fighting for the lead or a podium position, frankly. But keep that in mind that you don't really want to take it too wide. If you get in a situation where you get completely out of shape going into the bus stop, remember you got an escape straight ahead. Just drive straight. Yeah, you're going to get a 2-second slowdown, but that's much better than driving through the grass out of control and sideways and potentially being a bowling ball into other cars that are ahead of you in the bus stop because you're out of control. You can always just completely bail out, go straight, and just scrub your speed along the outside of the carousel before you get on the back straight. So I'd rather see that than trying to force something and ended up wrecking multiple cars as a result.
Well, Ward brings up a really good point. And I know we've seen it a lot. We're going to work on it during the EDEs coming up next week. But go back to your 600 marker there, where we were. Um, at what point, Chris, do you think if you were the inside car and you're not up alongside the outside car right now, the left side car where your real car is right there, at what point do you decide, oh, to heck with it, I'm going to, lift a little bit and jump over behind this guy on the left so we can get through here at a decent pace and the field doesn't either walk away on us or climb up our backsides? Where do you think you need to be before you have to make that decision? I see too many cars go all the way down to the 300 turning in where they should have made that decision about the 6 or 500.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And here's the lawyerly answer. It depends on who you're racing, right? And the only way you can get that information about who you're racing is either you've raced them before or you've been behind the car for a couple of laps now and you see where their brake marker is, right? But if you come up on a car and this is the first time you've ever interacted with this person, and this is, you've never seen them take this corner before, you've got no idea what if they're going to be braking at the 500 board or if they're like a super late braker and they're going to be braking at the 300 board. So trying to fight somebody and outbrake them going into the bus stop without knowing at all how they're going to handle the corner is a roll of the dice. For me in general, I usually won't try to make a pass into this corner unless I am alongside the other car kind of going into this point. So 500 before the 400 board, I want to be alongside the car, like door to door. If I don't have any overlap and we're getting past the 500 board, if I try to outbrake at any point going into this corner, I'm diving it on them, frankly. I am not in a position. I'm trying to outbrake them significantly to try to get alongside them before the turn point, and that is dangerous. So my rule of thumb is, unless I'm alongside them, and when I mean alongside, I mean like fully alongside them, I am not going to try to send this and make it too wide. If I realize that I'm not going to be able to get alongside the other car for a pass going into the bus stop, which is basically creating a situation where the other car is saying, well, he's alongside of me, he's in position, I'm going to bail out because I don't want to wreck. So unless I can get alongside them, if I'm anywhere less than even, I am lifting early, tucking behind the other car, and following them through there. If I know that I'm not going to be able to get alongside them and I'm not going to be challenging this corner, I want to signal to the other car that I'm going to tuck in behind them before the braking zone. That does two things. One, it tells them, hey, I'm not going to try to fight you going into this corner. Take it normally. Go as fast as you can because we both want to go fast through here and not lose time to the field. It does no good by showing your nose like you're going to make a move and then deciding at the last second, nope, never mind, I'm going to pull in, because the car in front may think, oh no, this guy's going to dive me, and they may actively lift and brake early, and then you tuck in right behind them, not expecting that, and then you just rear end them, right? So if you're not going to make a move and you're not going to make a pass, tuck in behind them, stay right behind them, lift a little early, and coast, save a little bit of fuel, and signal that, hey, take it normally so we can go as fast as we can. If you want to try to dive them, then okay, yeah, by all means, be out there and signal, hey, I'm going to try to make a move here. But that's one of the things about racing is you got to, whenever you make a pass on somebody, unless you're passing them in a dead straight line where both cars are full throttle, you are sacrificing time to the field in order to gain a position. So you got to determine, hey, is it worth me getting past that car that's in front of me right now and losing a couple of tenths to the field? Or is it more important to me staying in line, keeping that time to the field, and finding a place that's a little bit less risky to pass, and passing in a place where I'm going to lose less time. These are all things you got to think about when you're driving normally. And then to go back what I originally said, you got to know how the other guy drives. So if you're behind a car going into the bus stop, you've been behind them for multiple laps, you see that they consistently brake at the 400 board every single time. That's their standard braking zone. Okay, now you know the point of no return is for that car, and maybe potentially for your car, so you know where you need to be alongside them before they're going to be actually be hitting the brakes. If they're braking at the 500 board every single time and they're braking softly, and you know that you can brake at the 400 board because that's what you've practiced, then okay, yeah, maybe you can pop out and then use it to an advantage where you can outbrake them going in. But you will only know that if you follow them. You can't figure that out by trying to pass them as soon as you catch them at this point.
So there's another tricky part about this turn. If you're on the inside and you have a run on the car on the outside, and you get past them, say at the 500, you have to slow down more than they do. So that actually happened to me. We were making the turn almost, so I had to slow down more. So it looked like I was behind when we were making the turn, but really I was ahead. But I had to slow down more, and then I got run into the wall.
I guess I'm struggling a little bit to figure it out. So the only way that you're going to be able to have the corner is you're going to have to get out in front somehow, either through the braking zone or such. But yeah, since you are shallower, your minimum speed on that first apex, that apex with the wall right here, is going to be slower than somebody that's on the proper line. However, the car on the proper line can't drive into the back of you if you can get by them before the turn-in point. So if you outbrake them and you're able to get ahead of them, they can't just turn into your door because you're there. So I mean, that's one of the tactics when passing somebody is you put your car right next to them, you outbrake them so they can't. I mean, they see that you're right there, and then you delay your turn in for basically as long as you can, which prevents them from turning in. They can't turn into you. So you keep going. You're still going to make the corner, but you make sure you do a late apex and you slow your car down in such a way that the apex point for the outside car would be through your car. So they have to match your speed, and that's how you complete the turn going into the corner.
Right, but they got the black flag and I didn't, but it still ruined my race. So I'm just saying it's kind of risky.
Yeah,
in that regard.
It's absolutely, and that's what I'm saying is, this is a risky place to make a move. It's a good place to make a move because it's a really good opportunity to get alongside somebody before the turn in, and you've got this huge straightaway that you can draft to help you get alongside somebody. But if you're not able to get alongside them and you try to make a move where you dive in or try to outbrake someone, you're getting into a point where the track is going to get very narrow at the first apex. And so there's a high risk. So as I said at the very beginning, I usually don't try to make a pass into the bus stop unless it's at the end of the race, and I'm fighting for a podium, or there's just like a significant pace difference between the car that I'm passing and me, right? You know, I'm lapping 2 seconds a lap faster, something like that. I know they're going to be braking earlier based on the way I've seen them drive, so I know that I can trust and I can get by them in a safe manner. But rarely do I put myself in a position where I'm too wide with another car going to the bus stop. It's just doesn't work very well if neither party concedes. So the safe way to do it is, unless you're fully confident you can effectively get by them or mostly by them in the braking zone before the turn-in point, I don't even try to do it. I just get in line and take my medicine and try to find another point to pass. Also, remember, every situation's unique, right? they're not always the same, and there's no silver bullet into, hey, I need to pass somebody going to the bus stop. If I do this every time, they're not going to, drive hard on me or something. Everybody's different. Everybody you race is different. Everybody's got different risk tolerances, so you just have to identify what makes sense from a risk-benefit analysis going into here. And this is all stuff that you got to know, or you got to have the headroom to be able to think about before you get to that point, right? And the only way you do that is driving the track and driving the car is second nature, so it allows you to think about this stuff independent with actually driving the car. If you're really focused on, man, I need to, trying to drive the car and using all your brain power to drive the car, when you get into a racing situation like this, it's going to be really difficult to try to think about how to racecraft somebody while still trying to also think of where I need to brake, how I need to turn in, and all that stuff as well. So you need to have a certain a certain competency with driving the car on the track that you're on, so you can have that extra bandwidth mentally to be able to think about racing scenarios and plan for situations before they occur. But all great questions. All this stuff is really good discussion points. But at some point, I mean, racing happens. Look at the pros. Look at Formula One in Mexico, where Sergio Perez around turn 1 tries to go around the outside on Lewis, and they make contact, and Sergio's out of the race in turn 1. These guys are the best in the world, and they still make contact like iRacing amateurs sometimes. So, great questions. Any other questions about this? No? Okay, just checking text on Twitch. I don't see anything. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, that's all I really had for you guys. If you want, I can post my setup as well. I'm always happy to share it, of what I did to get this lap time. Check it out, see if it works for you. I'm not guaranteeing any success with it, but if it does work, great. You feel free to use it during the race, or feel free to tweak it. I basically just took a setup from, what was it? I took a Monza setup and added a little rear wing and changed some ride heights things to get the rear end a little bit more in check for some of these really fast sweepers. And the car started feeling pretty darn good. So check it out, see what you think. But other than that, have fun with it. The cup format, or the cup layout, is definitely an interesting race for us, because it's not usually done. So definitely practice it. Don't just go into it thinking, I know Watkins Glen. It can't be that hard. The cup configuration is significantly different enough that you probably need to work on it a little bit just to make sure that you're got everything mentally ready for the race.
Do you think the high downforce sprint is a decent setup for us amateurs out here?
I think it will be safe. I don't think it'll be the fastest setup. But then again, fast is all relative. If you take my setup and you're having trouble keeping the rear end in check, then it doesn't matter how fast it is if you can't consistently make good lap times. So I think high downforce, I would put it this way. I would give medium downforce a chance first, and see what you think. And if you don't like it, then maybe try high downforce. It depends on where you're losing the car. If the rear end of the car is what is causing our first thing to step out, then it's probably a wing issue and you just need to add rear wing. If you're understeering all over the place, then it's not a wing issue. It could just be the setup. So it just depends on what your driving style is and what you like in a car.
Right. Is that a setup from last year's car, Armando's?
Which what do you mean? The setup that I'm gonna post?
Did you get it from VRS from Armando?
No, it's my own setup. So
The VRS setup has the full wing 12.7. The VRS setup for Watkins has the high wing.
yeah, but is VRS running the boot? Because that makes sense. Because there's a lot more corners that you need.
Oh, good call.
You need
Not
grip
sure.
on. The cup, you're only got 3 corners that need wing, right? Or have anything, and you have a lot of the percentage on the cup format is flat out. Whereas the boot is got more technical on it, so that would make sense.
You know what though, with 56 cars on the track, you're going to be drafting somebody the entire time. How much does it really matter? I mean, you're going to be behind a guy most of the time unless you're the leader.
You'll be surprised, because I would say that especially on this big straightaway before the bus stop, if you can get 3-4 miles an hour on somebody else because of just drag, you can that is enough to be able to literally just drive by somebody and be completely by them before the braking zone of the bus stop. So if somebody's running full wing and you're running like 9 wing, and the difference is like 3 miles an hour at top speed, 4 miles an hour at top speed, yeah, you can just literally drive by them like they're standing still and be by them before the braking zone. So it can matter, but test it out. Again, if you can't, if any wing beyond high downforce is just not controllable, or you're sliding all over the place, then that's not the setup for you. And so you want to be able to, you got to at least be able to turn consistent laps without having problems controlling the car. And then once you get to a point where like, yeah, that's fine, the car feels like it's got plenty of grip, well, try taking out a little bit of wing, giving yourself a little bit more top speed and acceleration, and see if you can still manage the corners. The perfect setup will be the one that can give you the least amount of wing, but still give you the confidence to be able to take corners like you normally would.
When you take out a little wing, is there something else you need to adjust also?
Yeah, you need to lower the ride height. Think of it this way. The faster the car goes, the more air that's traveling over the wings. The more air traveling over the wings, the more downforce the car has. The more downforce the car has, the more weight from the aero is pushing the car into the ground. That's why you get the grip, is because the car is effectively heavier and pushing the tires into the ground more, which is increasing grip. So the less wing you have, the less aero is going to be affecting the ride height at speed. So if you look in the garage at the very first page, at the very bottom there's an aero calculator that's basically calculating the aerodynamic load at speed, your ride heights at speed. So effectively what ends up happening is if you lower the wing, you're lessening the effect of aero on the rear of the car, which means that at speed the aero is not going to be pushing the car as much, so you're going to have more rake in the car. So to counteract that, you lower the rear of the car to maintain the aero balance with lower wing. It also has the same effect that if you have problems like with the rear of the car stepping out and having too much oversteer, lowering the rear of the car can effectively add grip to that part of the car at the expense of the other side. So you're basically inducing understeer with lowering the car. So even if you don't change the wing, if you're finding too much oversteer in the car, if you lower the rear or soften the rear to cause the rear to be lower under high speed, it's going to give you more grip back there, which is going to lessen the effect of the car trying to swap ends on you.
You shouldn't give away all your secrets. Pretty soon we're going to be passing you.
It's just some of the fun things that come with driving the car. Effectively, what ends up on the setups, what ends up happening is either the rule of thumb is the softer a part of the car, the more grip you're giving that part of the car. But it's nothing's in a vacuum. Everything is at the expense of others. So if you soften the rear of the car, you're relatively stiffening the front. If you soften the front, you're relatively stiffening the rear. The softer part of the car is going to have more mechanical grip. And if you have more grip, that means that the other side of the car, the stiffer part of the car, has less grip, which means it's going to let go sooner. So if you've got less grip in the front of the car, what's going to happen? The front tires are going to lose grip first, which is going to lead to understeer. If you have less grip in the rear of the car, the front tires are going to stay gripped. The rear is going to let loose first, which means you're going to have oversteer. And then everything you have, all the tools and setup changes that you can make, ARBs, ride heights, all that stuff, is messing around with how those two, the front and the rear of the car, correspond with each other. And that's how you can affect oversteer and understeer. And then you add on aero, which has the benefit of increasing grip the faster you go, but has the negative of the more you have, the more drag you have at high speed. The other thing to always remember about aero as well is it only works at high speed. If you're on a track that's just got like tight hairpins, your aero is not doing anything. You're not going fast enough to get benefit of extra aero. So keep that in mind as well. But here, these fast corners, like the last two corners here, they're incredibly fast, so aero is doing a lot. So taking wing out is really going to affect how this car has. And that's why I was showing you that one particular lap where the rear end of my car was all over. I think I was running a 7.7 wing, which is quite a few clicks off of max. And that thing, it just was undrivable, right? So I can't run that wing at all and be fast or consistent. Maybe for a qualifying setup where I can do just one lap, I can make it work, but not over 40 minutes. It would be too difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I'll post it in the channel, the classroom channel above. Use it, try it out. You may hate it, you may love it, but I'll give you at least something that you can try out, basically to show you what I was using for the track walk, if you want to see what it's like. So, all right, guys, I got to call it there. I've got to go race another league race somewhere else. So, thanks for watching. I will post the replay shortly here in the channel above. If you have any questions, as always, just ask me or any of the admins. We'll be happy to help out. And yeah, good luck. The race isn't for another week and a half or so, so it's not this week. So plenty of time to practice. And I look forward to seeing you guys out there.